Okay, looks like it started.
Yep.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so wow, thank you everyone for joining us today. We had over 150 RSVPs for this event. So I recently attended the NPSP Day LA event, and it became clear to many of us that lots of other Salesforce community members were looking for guidance. And we're also pretty freaked out about all of the upcoming Salesforce security enforcements, which are all due very soon. So I recently read Hayley's helpful blog series about it and immediately reached out to her. So with very short notice, thank you so much to Hayley for so kindly agreeing to share her expertise with us today, especially after work hours from the East Coast. And I will pass it over to you, Hayley.
Thank you. And thank you very much for driving the slides and managing the Q&A and all of that, because it's hard to do all of the things at once. So thanks everybody for joining. Just a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of BrightHelm Partners. We are a small boutique Salesforce consulting firm that specializes in nonprofits, public sector, and higher ed. So my background is actually, this is my second career. I spent 20 years in the military as a cryptographer. So a little bit of this cybersecurity stuff's a little bit of a shout back to my past career. I had to kind of dust off some of my old skills to get my arms wrapped around this, and did a whole bunch of homework and thought if I had to suffer, I might as well save everyone else's suffering. So I typed it up, and I'm happy to share with you what I learned. There are still a few places where I'm a little confused about some things, but I will call those out. And at the end, there's a link also with all of the materials that you can download, including the checklist we're using with our own clients. So let's go ahead and move forward to the next slide. So the goal here today is really to help you navigate some of these choices, talk about why I think they're doing it. I want to share just a little bit of background around, from my background in cybersecurity and what the threat environment looks like and where I think they're really going. So you will get some capital O opinions from me, but also a lot of really pragmatic information about how to prepare for this. So try to keep it a healthy mix. Slide, please. So the biggest thing initially that I think is really important to get your brain wrapped around is that this is not just another release, right? I think most of us probably realize that. I do still talk to folks that are like, oh, it's like a release, and then it's just a regular release, or what's happening, or somehow are missing it. This is not happening in the normal release cycle, right? It is off cycle. These are not waiverable requirements. There are not exemption permissions that you can assign to people. You don't get to opt out of this based on IP address. This is a very aggressive position. And in my opinion, it's the most aggressive security push I've seen since the 2022 MFA mandate, if not honestly more aggressive. So it's definitely different. Feels different for sure. Slide, please. So I also want to say and acknowledge that I do personally believe that the destination is correct. I mean, I think where they're trying to get us to is the right move from security purposes. I also think the rollout has been very poorly managed. The communication has been poor. There's been a lot of conflicts between different parts of the communication. It's easy to attend a webinar and hear one thing and then get a different answer from Salesforce support. This is extremely compressed in terms of a timeline. Both of those things can be true. So I think we can hold that complexity in our minds, because I do think that in general, what they're trying to do is the right thing. Although it's going to reduce some pain and complexity, and I'm going to call some of that out. I also want to just highlight that the dates have moved more than once, right? There has been a lot of changes, right? And I really strongly encourage you to not take anybody's blog post or screenshot anybody else's slides and say, these are the dates. You really want to look at the official help article for this, and the links to all of that is in the kit at the end that you can download. So be sure you stay on top of that. Indeed, there was an update yesterday, which we'll touch on briefly, and I didn't see it right away until somebody else had shared it. So definitely want to stay on top of that. So go to the source for your dates. Okay, slide. So here's just a little bit of ground laying that I think might really help make some of this make sense, right? This is kind of getting at why I think they're doing this, and that might contextualize some of the moves they're making enough to make them fit into some sort of logical schema and be something that you can feel maybe a bit more comfortable with. I think that there really has been a lot of focus on the phishing resistance MFA compliance, rightly so. That's a really heavy lift, right? and it is a lot of effort. But I see that really more as the provocateur of this situation. What I think Salesforce is really trying to accomplish here is a concept we call identity binding, which is the idea that we're trying to bind an individual credential with a physical device or a physical key sufficient that we can say, if this took place in the system, then it was done by this person, right? So sometimes when you look at things and you're like, well, this is really inconvenient that I can't have like two keys and then give the key to somebody else, because they're trying to stop you from doing that, for the sake of identity binding. So when we talk about that, that is considered a very high virtue in security circles, and it is the idea of being able to attribute all the actions in the system to an individual person, not simply a shared vault or something that a group of people may have had access to. I think this is not inappropriate in a agent world, right? In a world where your data foundations being secure and trustworthy are so meaningful, understanding exactly who is touching that data and manipulating that data is a very strong security posture. I think that they're kind of sliding towards this while also addressing a very real threat plane around phishing. So if you've been paying attention to some of the security compromises that have happened and some of the hacking, it is all kind of centered around two major areas. Either it's been exposed endpoints as part of, say, like public profiles and in community cloud instances, or it has been phishing attacks. And that is really a response to essentially people not using the security or the MFA as they should, right? And just unthinkingly pasting it into a page that sort of looks like the homepage and the credential is captured, or just approving whatever pops up on their mobile phone. We'll talk a little more about the human behavior piece, but this explains the why, right? Just not the what. So we'll talk a little more about the what here, and we'll talk a lot about phishing resistance and passkeys. This is a destination that makes for strong security, but this is going to radically change the way a lot of instances are managed over the long haul. And those are the ripples that you're seeing. My advice and my take is understand this deeper intent and get out ahead of it, right? Adopt the security mentality and think about how you can accommodate that as best you can and have a backup plan and be ready. We'll talk a little bit more about some of that and as we cover the sections. So with that in mind, let's go to the next slide. Here is a complete map of the 5 major changes that we're looking at, right? There are a few little side things, but everything falls within these 5 major categories. The first one and the last one, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. So I'll cover the first one briefly here. And the last one is about changes to Salesforce Shield, which not a lot of people use. So if you are a Shield user, just know I'm going to gloss over this very quickly, but you have some to-do list items that you need to take a look at as well. Thinking about this first one, high-risk connection blocking, right, is already live. I first became aware of this when one of my own employees was frozen in our Salesforce org, because one of the behaviors Salesforce considers to be a high-risk login behavior is using a VPN. So if you use a VPN, you can be tagged by this high-risk connection blocking. What happens is the user account will be frozen and you just have to go in there and unfreeze it, right? It doesn't delete anybody or anything like that. You just have to unfreeze the account. Salesforce has been really clear on the security webinars that they are using machine learning to reach a definition of high-risk connections, which means essentially that they can't really tell us what the definition is. There's essentially AI doing some work on those logins, trying to identify them, right? So you could run into this for weird random reasons, like using different IP addresses in different places, which is what you get when you use a VPN or other similar things. So this is already out there, right? There's really nothing we can do about it. It's just something to be aware of. The rest of these we're gonna spend a lot of time on. Let's go to the next one. This is a little bit on dates drifting, right? When this was first published, for example, on the Step Up on Reports, it was originally for the 10th, right? This was originally supposed to be tomorrow, but it has been extended until July 1st. Apparently there were some issues in testing with this, and Salesforce became aware of these, and they are working on a patch. So the delay accommodates that patchwork, right? It could delay even further. Again, the lesson is verify with the help doc, right? Every single time when you're looking anything up. Okay, So let's go on to the next slide. Let's talk about the big one, right? I love these screen slides with Ruth on them. She's my favorite. So let's talk about what we mean here exactly, and just take a moment to explain what exactly is meant by phishing resistant and how this will be applied. So when we say phishing resistant, we mean a credential, a two-factor credential that cannot be captured with malintent. So this looks like things like if I were to send you an email that said, hey, I need you to respond to me. We've all gotten this. I get these occasionally. Hey, I'm changing my bank accounts. Can you please tell me what is required in order to get my next paycheck? And it turns out it's a spoofed email, and it's not really from it. It looks like it's coming from one of your coworkers, and it's BS, and it wants you to click on a link. That is a pretty obvious example, but some of the security breaches that we've seen are cases where people took the time-bound password. So those single-use passwords that you put the long key in there and it generates the little password, and then you copy and paste it. People were tricked into putting it into a false Salesforce login window, thereby capturing it and then giving immediately AI a chance to, because the adversaries are using AI now, immediately then giving them that time-bound credential, which they could turn around and log into the actual org with. So that's what phishing is in this case. A phishing-resistant MFA is an MFA that you do not type in. So you cannot be tricked into typing it in, right? So phishing-resistant uses what we call a passkey. A passkey is a segment of cryptographic material, and it has a pair on the server. So the server is public, and then you get a private key. And they do math together, and if the maths, right, then you are allowed to access. But that secret key is bound on the device in order to keep people from capturing it, in phishing ways, and also to bind to the identity of the user, right? That's what we're talking about here. So it's a little bit of background about how this works. For the most part, if you are using passkeys, they feel a lot like just putting in the 6-digit number, right? It's literally just going, hey, I'm logging in with a passkey, and then you pass through. So it's one of these rare examples where step-up security is actually less work. So let's move forward and dig into this requirement. And next slide, please. Who is a privileged user? So if this applies to privileged users, this is where we're going to get a little bit more pragmatic. Who are these people? The obvious initial case is that they're system administrators, right? And that is pretty easy to identify. We should all know who the system administrators are in our orgs, right? But it is also anyone who holds any of these system permissions, whether they hold them through any assignment path. So if it's in their profile permission set or any permission set group, then they will get hit by this requirement. So just be aware, it's a little bit more than just system administrators. Next slide. So what do we need for them to do, right? What qualifies to give them phishing resistant, right? Built-in authenticators. Now, I have heard some people say that they were told by Salesforce that Face ID and Touch ID won't work. The documentation says they will, right? I'll explain to you exactly what we're doing in a moment, but this is what the documentation says. So a built-in authenticator, the point being it is device-bound, right? It's reading your fingerprint, right? A physical security key, which is called a FIDO2 compliant security key. That is a security standard, or passkeys. Those are your options. So I described what the passkey is. It's a cryptographic credential. The physical security key is a passkey, but it simply stores it on a physical device. These cost like $50. You can get them on Amazon. When I was in the military, this is what we used, right? For all of our secure systems. When I used to fly missions in Afghanistan, I had a string around my neck with a whole bunch of physical security keys for the different equipment that we used for security purposes. It's very old technology. It's been around for a long time, and it's super, super reliable. The thing with passkeys is that you need to be aware of is that passkeys can be synced and stored in a vault online. So one password, LastPass, these types of things will create passkeys and then share them back and forth. And Salesforce just clarified yesterday that synced passkeys are acceptable. There's a footnote there. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Okay, what doesn't work? These TTOTPs, these are the time-bound ones, right? Where it generates the little number and you copy and paste it, or Salesforce Authenticator. Push notifications do not work. So that's not going to work. You need to get them one of these other options here. Let's go to the next slide. Little something to be aware of, and what I've seen some people struggle with amongst our clients is that privileged user lists, say that 5 times fast, is not what they think it is at first blush. It's pretty typical that we're turning up 1 or 2 admin equivalent users that nobody remembers, right? The boss wanted view all data because he wanted to run a report, or there's some integration user dangling out there that we gave modify all to. It's just a little tough to kind of find these guys. The easiest way to do this, in my opinion, is either to use the user access and permissions assistant app exchange app, or go to your developer console and query against the permission set assignment table. And you can see exactly who's got these things assigned, and it'll make it a little bit faster. So I am a big fan of that app, right? I know there's some other ones out there, but just be aware, right? You need to look carefully to be sure you actually find all these guys. It's not just your system administrators. Next slide. So what do you have to do, right? I think that there are 2 steps here. The first step is, don't overlook this, reduce the population of privileged users if you can, right? If you have an integration user or something that's like driving your form tool and you just were like, I don't want to take the time to make a special profile for it, I'll just check modify all data. That's an easy fix, right? That stopped being the easy way to do this because it's going to be a pain to manage, well, or you won't be able to manage the phishing resistant piece of it. Just fix the profile and take them off of the list if you at all can. So if this causes you to look at some things and lower your overall enrollment load, then you're improving your security posture, and that's a good thing. So take a little time to see if you can drop a few people off of these. And then be sure you enroll people into compliant methods, right? And I want to clarify what I'm really talking about there. Salesforce has said that if you when you go to log in, right, if for some reason you hit this requirement, right, they're going to send you a one-time password to the registered mobile phone number. And then when you log in, you'll be invited to register your phishing-resistant tool. If you lose your cryptographic key, you had it on a physical key or something like that, when Salesforce support resets your account, they're going to reset it so that a one-time password goes to your mobile phone. If you don't have that mobile phone anymore, you're sucking. And you're going to have to work with Salesforce to try to get in. It's going to be a case at least, and that I think we all realize that will not be a fast way to resolve the problem. So one of the things to really think about here is, for all of these people, do you have the correct cell phone numbers registered in Salesforce? It's really easy for people to change their phone numbers and not mention it. It's just never come up again. So that's something to think about as well. And then next slide. The last piece too is that until fairly recently, we've had this ability to waive multi-factor authentication for exempt users, right? That auto exempting is just going to stop at enforcement. So it's not a thing anymore, right? Any person holding it, you might want to actually take a look at it and ask yourself, do we really still need them? There are some legitimate exemptions, right? There are some use cases where there's some sort of, like, in reality, it's an API-based connection, but for some reason you actually need to surface the UI from time to time. You can go to Salesforce and submit a support case for that, right? According to the documentation, there is a process and they will take a look at it. I don't know anybody that's tried to do it. That doesn't strike me as something that they would have a whole lot of chill about. I suspect they would have zero chill, but that is a published process. I can't tell you if it works and how long it takes to work, but you can do that. Okay, next slide. Let's talk a little bit about the other big change, which I think is going to result in a tremendous amount of wailing and gnashing of teeth. This one makes a little less sense to me. Maybe they see something in the threat profile that I don't see, right? The issue here is that there have been some compromises where users were able to export a tremendous amount of information without being stopped. So they're trying to essentially introduce some friction in the ability to export through reports, right? This just seems like an odd way to do it, right? So the trick here is that step-up authentication essentially means that users will be asked to re-authenticate after running reports for a period of time. That period of time right now, according to the documentation, is 120 hours. I did also hear, not hours, minutes. I'm sorry, minutes. So like 2 hours. In one of the security webinars, the security team said it was 90, but right now the documentation says 120. So what does that look like? That essentially means that if I am running reports, maybe I'm preparing some grant reporting and I'm running reports constantly over and over and over again, right? If I do that for 2 hours, it's going to essentially log me back out and force me to log back in again. The other part that really sucks here is that loading dashboards that contain widgets that are reports will also trigger the step up. So if you had like a home page and somebody was going back to it a whole bunch, every time they load that page and they load that widget, that's going to count as a report run. And that will, if they do it for 2 hours, trigger the re-authentication. So not fun, right? No opt out, right? People are just going to be asked to log back in again. Next slide, please. I want to name something that I think is going to be a real problem for a lot of people, where this is really going to bite people and be painful, is around shared logins. Hey, we all signed the same MSA. We all know that we're not supposed to be doing this, but I think we also all agree that one of the most common use cases we've seen where logins are shared is around reporting. So it's not uncommon for organizations to be sharing them where they've got report subscriptions running. And a report subscription, of course, counts as a running of a report. So let's take a scenario that we're talking about here, particularly amongst like nonprofits or public sector organizations, where really mostly nonprofits, where there is this account and it's just called reports, right? And there's all these report subscriptions and it's emailing them to all these people and it's doing it on all these automations. If it does it for up to 2 hours, it will get locked out. The challenge for the re-authentication will go to whichever device set up the shared account. And that person may not even be at the organization anymore. So you can wind up with that account locked very, very easily. If there's anything operationally dependent upon those regular reports, then you got a pretty rough problem. There really isn't going to be a way to fix this other than purchase the licenses necessary to be sure that these are all assigned to the people that need these reports. And obviously procurement's going to take some time. So this is something you want to think ahead about. Is there some third-party product that is maybe a better answer? Are you maybe reconsidering your reporting strategy? Or are you going to assign some users? This is going to hurt some people. And it's a cost conversation, not a configuration issue. Okay, next slide. So who gets blocked, right? Just a little bit more of a dive into exactly how this happens. Users with no verification method on file will get blocked entirely and right away, right? It just won't work. The identity verification methods report will capture them. So this is a way to surface those folks. We also see that these are often dormant accounts, right? It's not uncommon for people to forget that somebody left and nobody's really actually using the report and it's from before MFA and blah, blah, blah. The big one here is heavy report users could hit this multiple times a day. If you have some sort of app page or home page that has widgets on there, every time they go there counts, they could find themselves re-authenticating 2-3 times in the day. That is the system working as designed, right? That is not an error or a flaw. That is it doing what it's supposed to do, right? So you're going to want to be sure to warn these people. Just think it's shaping expectations. Okay, next slide. So MFA is now in place essentially for all employee users, right? MFA is one of the single most important and powerful things you can do for security in your org. I'm really kind of surprised that it hasn't been fully enforced until now. We know they've postponed this many times. I think this time they mean it, right? So big overlap with Control 2 here, right? So while you're working on upgrading the quality of your MFA for your privileged users to a phishing-resistant methodology, then it's a good time to be sure that you have implemented MFA for all of your users, right? So this is coming as well, a little bit longer of a timeline. So there's some caveats here, though. A few things to think about. Let's go to the next slide for one of the biggest ones. Okay, if you are on single sign-on, not uncommon, right? There are a lot of organizations that use an identity provider, something that provides an MFA, like Okta is one of these, Microsoft Entra is one of these, we use Google, right? If your SSO is giving you your multi-factor, right? So the multi-factor work is being done when you log into Okta, and then Okta is logging you into Salesforce. That will count for an MFA, right? If your SSO is configured correctly. The SSO has to be telling, the IDP has to be telling Salesforce in that handshake that it has done an MFA. And that is a function of how your MFA, how your identity provider is configured, right? Same true here. I'm kind of crossing the streams a little bit and calling back to phishing resistant. If your IDP, such as Okta, is using a phishing resistant methodology like a physical key, it could be doing that and enforcing that, but it may not be telling Salesforce that it's doing that. And if Salesforce doesn't receive that information, then it will understand that it is not getting done. That gets a little more nervy when you realize that the way it tells it is these things called ACR, AMR signals. They're just little long strings of numbers separated by colons that contain information, and the placement within the string is the information. It's like the third or fourth field in is a binary for whether or not the MFA is phishing resistant. So there's a binary for whether or not it's doing MFA, and then there is a binary for if it is phishing resistant. So we all know that in a binary, that's a 0 or a 1, right? So 0 means no, but 0 is also null. So if it is being passed as a null, if it's just not telling, then as far as Salesforce is concerned, it's not phishing resistant or not doing MFA. So you're going to want to actually look into this and be sure that your IDP is configured correctly to pass all of that information completely. And if your report users are running a whole lot of reports, surprise, even if you're on SSO, they will still be required to respond to a step-up authentication. So they will still have to log back into Salesforce. So you need to be sure that they have everything that they need to do that, right? And that the IDP will send all of this. The blog post and some links in the resource kit get into the nitty gritty of how to like look at this stuff in the login events, right? The bottom line here is if you use an SSO, you've got to test this just as soon as it comes to your sandbox, right? And be sure that it's working as it should. I could really see how somebody could get trapped in a situation of the IDP is telling you, we're doing our part, or we're doing all the things we're supposed to be doing. And Salesforce is telling you the IDP isn't working, right? And then you're stuck with two vendors arguing that it's the other guy. So that could take a little while to resolve. I would, if you're using an SSO, I would test this just as soon as you possibly can. So a little bit of a flag there. Next slide. The other one is it's a little shocking in these modern times, but there are still organizations out there that have a lot of users that do not have smartphones. They are shockingly not issued at birth and not a universal thing that every single person has, right? Particularly in volunteer-heavy organizations, and I've worked with a few like heavily field-based organizations that are international and doing, say, field work in Africa. These are not people that have smartphones. So Authenticator isn't going to work in that scenario, right? So you need to be thinking about laptop-based authentications or physical security keys. Somebody asked on the morning presentation how this would work with mobile, and I honestly don't know. So I think the Face ID might cover you for the phishing resistant. I have not tested it and I have not dug into that. So that is a place where I just have kind of a blank in my knowledge. So if you've got heavy mobile users, you're going to want to do a little bit more research here. This group of people, though, physical security keys might make a whole lot of sense. If they've been working on, say, like iPads and stuff like that, then you might have to step up to laptops, right? So that they can work with the security key. So another little problem area. Next one, Control 5.
Hayley, I just wanted to let you know you're about 10 minutes out. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so Control 5. We're not going to spend a bunch of time on this. This is the transaction security policy. There's some adjustments you need to make in there. There's a whole bunch of material in the resources. If that's your thing, there's just not a lot of people on Shield, so we're going to sail right past this. Mostly because I want to rant about the next slide, right? From my perspective as a person who previously was responsible for security and managed these things, in the world of security, we have something we call the displacement problem. And Rachel, if you would advance to a slide, to the next slide. This is where we talk about this idea of like, and we've all written a validation rule and then had users figure out somehow a way to get around it, right? We talk about the displacement problem in security where if you tighten access in one place, it simply pressures people into another place, right? So I think we're going to see, particularly amongst consultants and third-party folks, we're really going to see if they do tighten this further and are starting to monitor whether or not our passkeys are synced, then, and I think for a lot of people, it's also just sort of a pain in general because they're privileged users. We may see folks just move to other ways to deploy configuration and manage an org. this is something to be aware of if you're an admin and you're working with a consulting partner, you're working with another vendor, right? In particular, some of these behaviors are quite risky, right? So MCPs that are connected directly to a CLI and are pushing configuration direct into prod is a very different security surface plane than a monitored authenticated user, right? So there's a real issue there with a governance disconnect, and I think we'll see a lot of activity pressed into these areas. And this is really something that could create a lot of vulnerabilities for you, even beyond the original purchases, or even the original issues that they were trying to fix. So something to think about, right? I obviously have my spicy opinions on that. Next slide. And then for consulting partners, right? If you are out here managing orgs, obviously your stuff is all in scope too, right? I can tell you at BrightHelm, we are using synced passkeys in 1Password, and it is working. And Salesforce just confirmed that this qualifies. But remember the ACR AMR signals? They are sending a value also. So there's a value for if an MFA was done. There's a value for if it is a phishing-resistant MFA. And then there's a value for if it is a device-bound or synced passkey. And that is a binary, and it's a 0 or a 1. So Salesforce can tell that we are using a synced passkey. They know it's happening. This is not a question of whether or not they can stop it. It is a question of policy. So in my opinion, if you consider that by changing that policy, they get to full identity binding, which is what I think they're really after in a modern era, they're letting us do it now. I am assuming this will not last forever. So I am making my backup plan. The future could look very different. And Salesforce can see this, and this is a decision they can make tomorrow with a flip of the switch. Okay, moving on. One more hit. Please don't get burned by the dates on the next slide. Please re-verify against all of the help articles and all of the materials. Assume the dates are going to move again until they've passed, right? And if you're going to screenshot anything, let this be the one. This is the link to download the kit. So what's in here are these slides, as well as my full references kit, which I cite all of this. I give you all of the links and all of the help articles. And I also give you our checklist that we're using with our own clients. So the place I want to leave it is just, looking on the bright side, right? This is a real security upgrade, right? It's a mess right now. One might say a bit of a shit show, right? I think that is a fair and earned term, right? But on the other side of it is a more secure world for ourselves and for our customers. So I'm bullish on this. I understand it, but boy, it's going to be a little bit of a rough transition. And that's my presentation. And if you bounce ahead too and you get to my face, the link is still there. Yeah, that's my being optimistic. And then that's the same link. Awesome. How'd I do? Ah, yes.
Amazing, Hayley. I'm gonna put this link in so people can just go there quickly.
Great.
Let me just put that in, and we have lots of questions for you. So hold on one second.
I bet. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put Hayley's link here for everybody in the chat, not the Q&A. So if you want this, it's in chat. Did I get that right? Just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I think so. Okay. Ready for some questions?
Yeah.
You have lots.
Okay.
If we don't get to them all, Hayley, what do you want to do with the ones that we don't? Do you want me to just send them to you, or what's best for you?
Yeah, if you send them to me, I'll follow up and I'll send you an email, and then you can share it with the group.
Okay. Great. Okay, we're going to knock out as many as we can in the time we have. I'm going to start from the earliest, from the beginning. So Dana asked, and this may be a rhetorical question, why isn't Salesforce using release updates for these changes versus monitoring a help article?
I personally think it's because of the threat plane. I think that they have information about very specific, distinct, and proximate threats, and that they are moving quickly because they're afraid of high-profile security hits being bad for marketing and certainly bad ahead of Dreamforce. That's my theory.
Interesting. Okay.
2 bits.
Yeah, good question. Next one is other Rachel. Like how you spell your name, they always try to add extra vowels to her name for some reason. But so she asked, we use Okta SSO for production, which I think my Okta admin is handling. I'm concerned about sandboxes. Okta can store the credentials, but I don't understand if that will be adequate and what will happen each time the sandbox is refreshed.
Yeah, each time the sandbox is refreshed, it's creating the same configuration, the same key pairing, right? carries over. So if something is updated in prod, then it's just like anything else, right? If you change your password in prod, it doesn't promulgate to the sandboxes. The same is true for all of the Okta security. If you are if you're required to have a phishing resistant MFA in production, you are also required to have it in a sandbox. So it's exactly the same thing.
That was my question. So we have to do this in every instance, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You sure do.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, Andrea asks, we have an admin user, quote unquote, that is our automated user. We authenticate for gear set. Should we just switch that to an integration user? How might that be impacted? What is suggested for an automated / system user that is not an actual person?
Yeah, if you can switch it to an integration profile, do, right? But I think we all realize that profile doesn't cover every possible need. There are scenarios where you do need to log into the UI and you have to flip it back and forth. So you're going to need to figure out who is the custodian of it. First of all, if you can't move it, right, then it needs to belong to a person, right? So that they can use their MFA in order to reset it and manage it. And if you are going to keep it as, just called automation user, then you're going to want to think about who owns it, who has the backup cell phone for recovery, and document that so that you don't get locked out.
Okay. This question is from Noah. We have 2 Experience Cloud sites with external users. There is one self-signed cert supporting SSO into Tableau for one of these sites. Salesforce is the provider for the SSO. Will we need a different cert config to support this after the change?
You got a really good question there. I don't know the answer to that question. The SSO does not spare you from a step-up authentication for core reports. It is not applied to Tableau. So I don't believe that would get hit by the step-up. I think then the question becomes, if it's a privileged user, is the SSO going to cover your MFA requirement? And then I think you're back to the same place you would be even if it was a core user logging into Salesforce. You're going to want to test it and be sure that Okta is passing, or whatever it is that you're using is passing the appropriate values to keep that connection user going.
Awesome. Okay, we have one from Nicole. We had step-up authentication available in our full sandbox, but we had to refresh it and now it is gone. Any way we can get it back? Also, is this available in anyone's production?
It's not in any production orgs I've seen yet. I wonder if that is one of the bugs that they are working on. That is specifically the feature that is driving the patch. So I would hold tight until the patch is released. That's probably why you can't get it back, is because they're working on that actively. No point until you release the patch. It doesn't. You're testing not the thing. So it just doesn't really matter right now.
Got it. We have one from Catherine. We have internal security requirements set by our security and privacy team. I'm sorry, at a nonprofit, very jealous you have a security and privacy team. But anyway, I digress. For the types of information that is stored in our Salesforce org, these requirements, including the ones that are recommended and will soon be required, far exceed those. Why do you think they're forcing all customers to have the same security regardless of the types of information in their orgs?
Yeah. Because I think for a couple of reasons, because above all, I think because it's just really bad marketing for Salesforce, right? Every time a story hits the news where somebody's org was breached, even if that is because they were managing it poorly, right? Which overwhelmingly these cases are, I cannot personally think of a true technical failure. They are all, either making bad decisions or they're human factors, right? That's extremely bad publicity for Salesforce. And I think it is also a problem in the context of serving public sector customers, and they can't segment that portion of the architecture. So I think part of this is also being sure they can continue to chase federal clients, right, which have FedRAMP requirements and higher security requirements. My theory is that it's mostly just really bad PR. They don't want it.
Okay, we got one from Britt. Seems like Touch ID does not work for reports, only login. Is this true?
Yeah, you do have to physically re-authenticate. Yeah, you do need to do that. I've had a few other people report that. I don't feel that the documentation is clear on that. I think that point is very confusing. And I would also say that they're working on a patch on that. So nothing means nothing until we see the next version of it and you test it again, because that may be one of the things that gets fixed. They just said bugs. They didn't explain exactly what they were fixing. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Michelle. Can you clarify about the VPN thing? What I saw is that the issue is only with VPNs with anonymizing proxies. I thought we'd be okay with our official Cisco VPN.
That is a really good question. I thought it was all VPNs. So if it actually works out that your Cisco VPN works, then I think that would be great. I do know a few people that have company VPNs that have reported that some users have gotten locked. I don't know if that's the intended behavior or not, but I have a client that has a company VPN that experienced that. So test and verify.
We have another one from Catherine. What is the best way to test to make sure your phishing-resistant MFA will work prior to the deadline?
Yeah, so when it gets to your sandbox first, it behaves exactly the same in the sandbox as it behaves in production. So you would test it thoroughly in the sandbox, actually activate it, follow the instructions in the help articles, right? It walks you through it. It's really not very hard. It's really just turning things on, and then attempt to log in using your new process, right? This is the same thing we did initially as well. So you would then pair you have to disconnect whatever your current MFA is and then pair your next one. So for example, we used the TOTPs. So we were using like the time-bound ones that were just generated from inside of OnePass. So you go into your user account, you disconnect that MFA, you go to log in, it prompts you to register another MFA. This time you generate a passkey and register that. If you're going to use physical keys, then you plug in the physical key and you register that. And then after that, you're good to go. So if you test that and it accepts the registration and lets you log back in, good sign in a sandbox. You're going to want to activate it in prod before the deadline if you can. Some of these things are weird about like once they're on permanently. Some of these are on and off, check the documentation. But if you can activate it ahead of time and validate that it works in prod, I would also do that too. We did. Yeah.
Always test.
Yeah.
The next two are kind of similar, so I'll start with the earliest one. This does not impact integration users. Michelle asked, this does not impact integration users, though, correct? This is only for direct UI logins, not users connecting via API.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah, API only is exempt, for better or for worse. Yeah.
And Cassie had a slightly similar question. How does this apply to integration license? What advice do you have for users we have that are integration users, but still on a full license, i.e. shared? I'm gonna act like I didn't hear that, Cassie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I have two pieces of advice for you. First of all, if they're true API only users, then they're exempt from all of this, right? So it doesn't really matter. The second thing I would say is you and a whole bunch of other people, and then if they tighten the rest of this up, then guess where the threat plane just moved? They're coming for you. So I would try to be compliant with the spirit of the security policies, which is, identity binding to the extent that you can afford to support that, right? And get out ahead of it and do more than is really necessary, because they can decide in any day that they're turning on the switch and requiring that elsewhere. And I personally think they should. So I think it's really problematic that I can go to the command line interface and do things to the data and the configuration that I'm not allowed to do through the UI, right? That to me is a big old security hole. So my advice is be compliant with the spirit of the regulation to the extent that you can afford it.
And this is slightly similar. Automass, with what you just said, API users set up on an actual license, does this apply to them as well? I assume the integration license.
As long as they're API only, they need to be marked as API only users. If they're API only, they're exempt.
Okay. Bear with me. I'm getting. Catherine asked, are logins to Trailhead and Salesforce Help and other places where you log in with Salesforce but aren't actually logging into your org going to also require this phishing-resistant MFA? Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a really good question. I would imagine no, right? But why would you want to juggle two different kinds, and you can only have one linked to your user account at a time anyway? So it's not really going to matter. Once you register that as your MFA, then that's your MFA. It's going to do it every time you log in.
Yep. Does a step-up authentication? Catherine also asked, does a step-up authentication happen on dashboards too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those count.
I found that out the hard way too.
Yep.
Yeah.
For real. Yeah.
Dana asked, why isn't there an option to opt out of some of these mandates? We're all asking that. The step-up authentication is going to cause such pain with our end users. Should we stop using Salesforce for reports and move to a different platform?
Well, I think that they would be happy to sell you Tableau to resolve that problem. Well, you're not the only one, and honestly, really, in the world of headless, then that is a really good option, right? So again, we talk about the whole displacement concept in security. If you just make it really hard for me to run a report, then I'm just going to go figure out some other way to meet my need, whether it is secure or not. A headless connector through Claude that is generating reporting is shareable and API only and will not face any of these constraints. So I personally also think that part of the reason they are being very assertive about this right now is in part because I don't personally feel core reporting in Salesforce has much longer to live. That's just my 2 bits, right? Where I think the technology is moving. So you certainly could, right? It might be time to explore some of those other options. It's not super hard to do, and particularly if you are using Slack or using Slackbot at all, then it is also really excellent for generating exportable tables, depending on what you want to use it for. Might be worth thinking about what are your alternatives and how much will they cost you.
Interesting. Chrissy asks, so how will report subscriptions work? If it's supposed to email me, then I have to log in to have it sent, ?
So I'm not sure I'm tracking.
Will you still have to do that step-up authentication on report subscriptions?
Yes, because it counts as a report run. So it just won't mail it to you, because at that point it'll say I needed an authentication, and it will force you to authenticate. If it's headless in that sense of it's just emailing it to you, then it's just not going to email it to you. And then the next time you log in, it'll ask you to authenticate, and then it would do it. I don't know if it's going to queue that and release them all after it's done, or if it just bypasses those scheduled ones or not.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Joanna asked, there's some confusion on when the step-up authentication is required. I thought I saw that it was when the user first viewed a report, regardless how long ago they MFA'd into Salesforce. Sounded like you said only after already viewing reports or dashboards for 2 hours.
The way I interpreted the documentation is the 2-hour limit. But again, they have not been consistent, and there have been many things in the documentation that on the webinars they have said a different thing. So it wouldn't be the first time Salesforce failed to document something effectively or correctly. So test whatever your concern is, enable it and test it so that you're sure of the behavior. This also falls underneath the patch. So, who knows until after the patch and its release notes are
out. I have one from Sarah. This is a good meaty one, so bear with me.
None of these are
long questions. Yeah, these are all great questions. Might be a silly questions, but can we clarify what is meant by, quote, running reports, unquote, for step-up authentication? Does this mean just viewing a report?
Yeah, no, this is an excellent question. This is not a stupid question.
There's more. Right? Do you want me to stop there, or do you want me to?
No, keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So also for dashboards, does it mean hitting refresh, or will having it open, for instance, if we have a dashboard on a homepage, cause the 120-minute timer to run? That sounds like essentially everyone will basically be prompted to log in every 2 hours, regardless of what they are doing in the system.
Yes. Yeah, that is correct. So it counts as a report run. The segment of Salesforce that supports reports is called the reporting engine, right? Just the same as we have like DML and we have Apex and we have the UI, right? There is this module essentially that supports the report run. Anytime you trigger that and force it to pull DML, to do a DML transaction, to pull information out and structure it for a report, that counts as a report run. So that is loading a report in your window, that is running a scheduled report event, that is loading a widget from a report on any page, that is loading a dashboard that contains any reports. All of those activities will count. Does it sound like it's going to happen every couple hours to darn near everybody? Yes, that is true.
No, that's going to be fun. Maybe able to do a couple more. Although this sounds like Josephine answered herself, but I'll ask it anyway, Josephine. So how do you know that your IDP is set up correctly and telling Salesforce it's set up correctly? How can you test it? Hayley just stated test in Sandbox. Trusting that you have tested all the scenarios is the thing.
Yeah. In the login event is the AMR ACR signal. So you can inspect that. There's instructions in the resource kit around how to do it. And it's not something that I have ever done prior to this or really know much about, but you can follow the instructions and help and, go find it and, query in the developer console, the login event, and the string will be right there. So you'll be able to see what your IDP is passing, right? But also if you test it and the IDP works, well, then it's sending the correct things. You should only need to do this if you test it and it's not working. And the reason I suggest this is because if you just test it and it doesn't work and you go back to Okta, they'll be like, what? We did our thing, right? You need to go back with that key and say, I need this set up so that it is passing these values.
Okay, I think we can maybe do a couple more and then we'll pass it to Tristan. Okay, so Nicole asked, how will we know when the phishing-resistant MFA is available in Sandbox prior to being enforced?
That is on that help page with the grid where it lists all the individual dates. I think we have that in the presentation, but again, don't trust my presentation. Go back to the help page to be sure. So phishing resistant MFA, the last time I checked, should be in sandboxes on the 17th and in production, enforced in production on July 1st. No, I'm sorry, that's a step up. I apologize. See, I'm making it worse. Sandbox on the 22nd, it was the same in July 1st. But that is just the last time I checked it, which has been a couple of days ago since I did these slides. So go to the help page, it's linked in the resource kit, and double check for yourself.
Yeah, and I'll just add that because I just tested this step up. One day I went in, the setting wasn't there. I just kept looking and then it was there. So you just kind of have to keep checking your sandbox when it appears.
That's annoying.
Yeah. Okay. I think we'll take the last one from Jesus and then I'll probably email you the rest, Hayley, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So Jesus asks, isn't there a configurable place in setup where you can change the reporting step up time? Do you know what that looks like? Or has Salesforce given a preview of what that looks like?
No, this was discussed heavily on the webinars I attended to, and they did not mention anything about that setting. I haven't seen anything about that, but I haven't gone looking for it either. I will after this, but I haven't seen that or seen any reference to it.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I actually just tested this, Jesus. You can configure it, but the max is 120 minutes.
So you can
set the time. I think I actually set it like 1 minute or two to test what it would look like.
To force a test.
Yeah. And so that's a great way to test it. But the most they're going to give you is 120, just to let you know. So
that's hilarious.
Okay. I think I'm going to end it there. I will capture the rest and just get that to Hayley. Thank you so much, Hayley. I'm going to pass this quickly to Tristan and then we'll do a wrap. But Tristan, are you here? I hope. Okay. Well, I will. We just did questions. We just whipped through that.
He says he's on mute.
Oh, do I have to unmute him? Sorry, Tristan, 1 second. Bear with me. That'd be fun. Let me find you, Tristan. Oh, I can do a search. There you are. Okay. Can I unmute you? I actually don't know how to unmute you. Sorry, Tristan. I'm going to show these resources. This is going to get shared afterwards. There is lots of resources here. I'm not totally sure how to unmute you, Tristan. I'll go ahead and read it if that's fine. And this will get sent out. The recording will also be posted. So don't worry, you'll have all that afterwards. So just wanted to say thank you so much. Tristan's here in the background in spirit. Sorry, Tristan. Bear with me. It's the first time I'm using Bevy. I did hit the 3 dots, but it's not giving that. Anyway, Matt, the amazing Matt Meyer, CTA, security awareness advocate for us all, is generously giving away 2 copies of his book to some attendees on this meeting. So keep an eye out for thanks. Oh, sorry. Tristan's Tristan's always writing the chat. So also look at what he's writing. Multitasking. I will draw names later today and we'll notify the winners. So thank you so much, Matt and Tristan, for generously making that possible. And then just wanted to switch to, Tristan's also doing office hours. Easy Protect, which Matt is a founder, I believe. They have a new product. I'm just going to go ahead and read this for you, Tristan. Sorry. So Argus, this is the security teammate your org has been missing. It is an autonomous incident response platform that drives every Salesforce security incident through the full NIST SP 800-61 Rev 3 lifecycle. Every milestone has a named human owner. Every phase gate is enforced, and every action lands in an immutable audit trail. The human owns every decision from identification to resolution. Built by Salesforce CTA, Matt. Easy Protect is 100% US-based and DFARS compliant. Hopefully Tristan shared the link in the chat, but it will be in the slide deck as well. Yes, Tristan's adding stuff. Thank you. And let me just say thank you so much to Hayley, who spent her, she's on the East Coast, spent her after work hours with us, sharing this amazing knowledge. Thank you, Tristan. Sorry, I have no clue how to unmute everyone in Bevy. First time I used it. I'll figure that out. But thank you both so much for being here and sharing everything. And I will be sure to get the recording out soon. Thank you for joining
My pleasure.
us. Thanks,
Great to see everybody. Bye.